Hello, everybody. It's Angie Nuttle at the VIP Center for Business Women. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
I have an incredible guest with me today, Miss Rachel Long, who you're going to get to know, and I'm going to tell you it's going to be such a delight. I had the chance to sit down and talk to you recently, and I walked away from that conversation just feeling light and just so honored to be in your presence, because you've been doing so much and you've gone through so much. So I'm getting ahead of myself, I know, but before I even introduced you.
I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, good. And just so you know, Rachel brought her son with her for support, so he's in the background. He decided he didn't want to be on the camera today, but we know that he's here. We know that he's here. And it's a small world because he happens to know my daughter at Center Grove School.
Yeah. They happen to be in the same star class, which is a homeroom.
Yeah,
together,
I mean, that's
funny.
kind of crazy how that all came together, right?
That's great.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So, Rachel, tell us who you are.
Well, so I'm Rachel Long. I'm actually a pastor at Emmanuel Church on the south side of Indy in a town called Greenwood, and I am the founder of Joshua Center, which is a nonprofit that helps adolescents and children find hope and healing, specifically in grief. It centers all around grief. Yeah. And I also am the founder of Hill Podcast, which has been on a hiatus to launch the nonprofit Joshua Center. But I'm also a wife. I've been married for 25 years to my husband, and I have 3 kids. Grace, 23, Gabe, 20, and Maverick, who's with us here today, and he's 15.
Fantastic. So what I think is so interesting, I'm from Greenwood, from that area, and my daughter wanted to visit Emmanuel Church, and so we started visiting. She fell in love with it, but then I discovered I was looking for women to connect with. We have our Purple Life conference that's coming up, and so I was just kind of sending information over about it, and you and I connected. I was like, I have to talk to this gal. There's some mojo going on with her here.
Well, that's funny. And I felt the same way about you, and I was very excited to finally get to connect with you. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot going on at Emmanuel. It's if you don't know what Emmanuel is, it is a mega church on the south side of Indy, and it exists to see people come to Christ and grow in Christ. And it thrills my heart that your 15-year-old really connected there.
Yes.
Our lead pastor, Danny Anderson, he's a great communicator, and we think he can connect with lots of people. So but that's incredible. That's incredible. I really appreciate getting to be here with you this morning.
Oh, I just want to hug you. I want to hug this lady. So, where do you want to start? We've got some different places that you could go. Where do you want to start first?
Well, I think if you're giving me that, I would say that I would get to, I would want to talk about how I serve a good God in all 3 of those areas that has marked my life with grace and protection. And when we got to have our conversation together, we talked about my beginnings, all the way from being a child that was adopted at birth on through struggles and hard things that happen around the college years, on into how God continues to show me grace in my mistakes, but protect me from things in the world. Right. And I think that grace and protection now at 48, I say closer to 50 than 40. That's what I say all the time when my knees hurt. That is that protection of, even when I was scared or sad about something throughout life, moving me with that protection has been instrumental in getting to do all that I've gotten to do for him, and through his grace and protection. It is amazing to me how much especially in the times that we live in and in the ways as women, but also just as human beings.
Yeah.
There's fear and sadness and hardship around us constantly.
Yeah.
And remembering that he gives us grace and protection
Yeah.
is super helpful.
So I do have one question about being an executive pastor at a big mega church.
Yeah.
I mean, what's it like to be a woman in the church?
So something that's very interesting was, I guess I didn't realize how much I work with men until I started going into Joshua Center, into the helping profession. And we went to like the National Grief Conference, and it was all women, and my husband was the anomaly because I'm used to being in rooms where it's all men.
Right.
And I'm the one of maybe 3 women in the room. So with the executive pastor piece, there was a season when I didn't know if at Emmanuel we would even have women pastors. And
Right.
a former executive pastor had like made it clear that we weren't going to do that and go
Right.
that direction.
Right.
But our lead pastor really does empower women in the field of ministry. And so with lots of study, our church made that shift to bring women forward. And I actually got to be the first female
Yay.
pastor at Emmanuel. And then now we have a lot of women doing a lot of really powerful work there.
Yeah.
And I would say that it is very by denomination what the levels of empowerment will be.
Right.
So there are still things that we don't participate in at Emmanuel as women, but our senior pastor does talk to us and encourage us.
Yeah.
He was just helping me this week with a talk on why God allows suffering
Mhm.
and like a talk about the Joshua Center. So
Yeah.
I would say that we choose progress over perfection.
Yes.
So
Oh, that's
my
so good.
idea of what women in ministry should look like might
Right.
be different than the other people or the elders even in our church.
Right.
But submitting to the eldership as well as working within what is given to me and what is my work in front of me. I mean, that's just true for all of us, right? Like
yeah.
everybody from an executive pastor to a counselor and everybody in between in their
Yeah.
business, because it might not be what you wanted to work on right now or how. Oh, we pray for God to give us something and he's like, I'm going to do it. But here's how it's going to happen. And you're like, I really didn't think that was going to be.
Right.
Are we sure you were right? Oh, yes, you're God. I forgot.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
So.
I'm not God, you are.
Boy, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a strong, powerful woman to
Yeah.
say, I'm not God, you are.
Yes.
And I'm going to walk this out with you.
Yeah. You know, I just love that story. I admire you that you are almost like a pioneer in that space that you.
Thank you.
I just actually got ordained this year. So it's
incredible.
Yeah, well, and so I have a ministry. It's a little bit different. You know, it's women in the marketplace. But I think about someone like you, how you can, I mean, these women they're looking to, you know, just, they want to live for Jesus. They want to be about the kingdom business. And what a powerful mentor I'm sure that you are for the women who are in the church, but even potentially outside of the church, you know, women they're out here and they're in business. Yeah.
Well, what I would say I've learned from, this goes with the grace piece, right? That if God puts it in you, let's say he puts in you something that in the church that you feel called to be in and to serve in, and he puts something in you that the church is not ready for or doesn't say that that's okay, then I would say that God is the only one that can stop your ministry for whatever reason. So if you're a young person or an older person and God said to you, I want you to speak on this, then he'll make other platforms.
Right.
Like he's a way maker. We know
Yes.
that. He will move you into... He will provide the opportunity for you to move forward. I was meeting with a gentleman who is over Indiana Ministries yesterday, and he said what he has found as their congregation has started to embrace women in leadership, in ministry leadership, is that the ministry is what shines through.
Yeah.
And when you see someone who's helping people connect to Christ or helping them come to Christ and grow in Christ, you start to see the ministry over whether, like, who is the minister.
Right. Yes.
And he said that's been super powerful in his denomination. And I found that very interesting and encouraging.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, right, our goal as Christian businesswomen is to lay it down, right?
Yes.
To die to self and to lay it down.
Oh my gosh, so
and
true.
to give God the glory for it.
Right.
And the dichotomy there is all those gifts were from him.
Yeah.
And he wanted to lift you up in it.
Oh, that's
and
so
his
good.
child. I mean, how many times do you lift your child up and say, I might have given you, for example, my daughter Grace, she's an incredible singer. Her father gave her that gift, not her mother. And because of that, she used that gift to sing. So, and she has an incredible voice and fostered that gift, music lessons and piano and deb tones at show choir and he is also proud of her and the one that gifted her.
Yes.
And that dichotomy can just fill your soul.
Yes.
And drive out things like fear and drive out insecurities.
Yeah.
Which we all have.
Right.
I can tell you, getting dressed this morning for this interview, we all have insecurities. I tried out several different things. But that's something that gets driven out when you step into your gifts, and only God can take away that ministry.
You know, I want to just dive right into the Joshua Center and your podcast. How did you actually get started with all of that?
So HILL stands for Heard, Important, and Loved, and I think that there is a lot when you look back on your life, when you're thinking about those cringy moments in middle school or those cringy moments in high school. I specifically had a moment in middle school where I was a swimmer and played basketball and was a cheerleader and you know, in drama club and chess club too. And I found out that there were people around me that I wasn't listening to. And I found it out the hard way. And we had a young lady, this is a pretty dramatic story, that had tried to tell me some things and I hadn't listened, and a couple of other people hadn't listened, and then she tried to take her life. And it wasn't our fault as 13-year-olds. That's not the fault.
Right.
But what can you glean from it? And I decided then, and this was right before my freshman year of high school, when people are with me, they would have the opportunity to feel heard, important, and loved. I can't make them.
Right.
But I would provide that opportunity. So the HILL podcast is a lot of stories.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stories of well, we did a season on grief, and we've done just tell us your story. We'd love to hear it. We took a hiatus to launch Joshua Center because one person, right?
Yeah.
And so with that hiatus, we're getting ready to come back in January. I'm so excited about that, and we're doing Christian women leaders and for this season. So season 4 will be that. Joshua Center comes from a different place. Unfortunately, do you want me to go on into that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So
I'm totally captivated. I know. I see we have a few ladies on here. You're probably captivated too.
So with Joshua Center, let me tell you what happened to me there. I was adopted at birth, and my brother was also adopted from another family. And unfortunately, we lost Josh to bipolar disorder. It was undiagnosed for several years, and he died of combined toxicity, which was from treatment from one place. My family lives about an hour and 15 minutes away, and treatment from another place. And so those drugs interacted, and it was right after he started getting help. for his bipolar disorder. And I was crushed.
Yeah.
Because he was very close to my husband, like a best friend to him. They played tennis together. They were extremely close. And then he was my brother. And people would joke that you two never fight. You two. It was so funny. One time, my kids, Grace and Gabe, were fighting, and I said, this just breaks my heart. Your Uncle Josh and I had never fought. And Grace looked at me and go, yeah, because you didn't have the same blood, and walked out. And I was like, okay. That's, out of the mouths of babes. But what I do know is that God knew that his midlife was 13 years old. And he protected me in that.
Yeah.
And my brother and I were extremely close. And watching him struggle and lose his life was devastating to me. It was devastating to me. And at that time, I didn't have, I was 29 years old with 2 babies, and I shut down. And so that's a very deep connection with Emmanuel for me. My small group came around us and took care of us. Yeah. And so as they started taking care of us and I started to get back up, I looked down at these 2 little ones, and they were struggling. And I didn't know what to do. So I went to get some intervention from a therapist. And the first thing she said was, your primary focus is your children, and you need to be a mother. So we've got to put Josh in a box and put him on the shelf and bring him down that was a complete trigger, because I had been the one my parents were devastated. Yeah. And I had walked with them, sometimes out front. Yeah. And just put him in a box and stood over, and was the last person to leave as they put him in the ground. And so that I went into what I now know from being a grief counselor is called delayed grief. And it was, I didn't mourn at all. Grief is internal, mourning is external. Didn't mourn him at all. And I stopped that whole process. Well, your body's not going to let that happen. So I suffered some extreme disconnection and weight gain. Then I suffered from delayed grief. And so working through that, I found an incredible therapist, but it was 7 years later. Wow. And so then you have all that compounded trauma from the delayed grief. Yes. Angie, it took a lot to bring me back out of that. And we use Warden's tasks of mourning at the Joshua Center, and the last one is to find your enduring connection as you embark on your new life. And I was like, yeah, that's not ever going to happen. I'm going to spend the rest of my life missing my brother. And at that point, that was a hard, negative. But the truth is, now I can say, I'm going to spend the rest of my life missing my brother. He's never going to be forgotten as long as I'm alive. Right. He's never going to be dead all the way as long as I'm alive. And so Joshua Center became that enduring connection. And we've been incredibly blessed. We're only 1 year old, and we are just starting to start hiring licensed clinical social workers outside of, I've been doing the grief counseling. I'm a certified grief counselor, but I've been doing that work, and we're just getting ready to take that next leap. And it has been incredible to honor him in this way.
That is such a story. I mean, I just feel the depth of that story, and it's so powerful. And even though it was a very traumatic experience that you went through, there's going to be fruit now.
Yeah. There really is. Here's an ironic thing. This is statistically not correct, but it is correct for us. So this kind of flies in the face, and we're trying to figure out why. 60% of our clientele is male. And we don't know if it's the name Joshua Center, but I say that because I watched my son, who was 2 when my brother died, not be able to feel like he could. He had disenfranchised grief, and it didn't feel like he should be sad, because he had known Josh just 2 years, and when you're 2, you don't have a lot of memory like
Right.
making, but he did, and he grieved what he didn't have. And
Right.
then watching my son now, Maverick, he grieves Josh as well. And why I say that, why I bring that up is it's incredible that God is bringing us all these little boys that lost their dad at like 2 and 5 and 7,
Mm-hmm.
and getting to see them be able to take steps to have something to hold on to of their dad, even if it's not a cognitive memory, their soul knows.
Yeah.
And their subconscious knows. And so when I think about the devastation that Josh's death was to our family, the meaning making of the Joshua Center, it brings hope to us too. It brings hope. It's a renewed sense of hope and healing for even my husband.
Yeah.
And his excitement around this has been super encouraging.
Yeah.
Because it makes meaning out of a meaningless thing.
Yes, and that's a perfect way to say that. I mean, if you think about the Joshua Center and everything that you're doing, what would you say is really important for the public at large to know about it?
Yeah, if I would say when a child has a loss, no matter what age they are, if they're 25 and under and a child has a loss, with each developmental milestone, you're going to see some re-grieving. And that might make your chest tight. But having the knowledge that, okay, what does that mean, re-grieving? Well, what it means is that they didn't know at 6 when a grandparent passed away that they wouldn't be there at 18 when they graduated. They're not thinking of that.
Right.
They're thinking of what's right in front of them. They're pretty egocentric. I mean, God created us that way for us to survive as children. Mm-hmm. So they're not thinking like, I'm not going to have my grandfather at my wedding. So each of those milestones, knowing that there could be a place of intervention that can help with those. We don't keep people past when their grief is leveled out.
Mm-hmm.
So we refer out to then psychotherapists,
right.
And we work solely on the grief. And so there are times when you need like 4 or 5 appointments because you went from 6 years old to 9 years old when there's this next cognitive jump.
Right.
So just having the awareness that children being okay right now, they won't be okay forever in it.
Right.
And that is okay. It's fine for them to it's not even fine. They can't help it. It's here it is. I mean, the truth is we can either deal with it for the child or we can put our heads in the sand and say, he's fine.
He'll get through it.
He'll get through it. Kids are resilient.
Yes.
And children are resilient, but they need support from loving, caring adults. And it only takes one caring adult to step in and say, hey, maybe this behavior of being 9 and punching everyone at school isn't, or why is she so rebellious? I knew that my teenager was going to be rebellious, but why is she so rebellious? Well, maybe she was adopted and there's grief that we never talked about because there is grief in adoption even at birth, and I didn't know that till much later on. Maybe let's look at where they are in their grief journey and being proactive to jump in and say, okay, I know there's a next cognitive jump around 9. Let's come in. Let's start talking about it now. You might be able to thwart it even by talking about it. Yeah, with just the other parent.
This is so valuable. My sister-in-law is an adoptive mother, and she has 3. 2 children that she adopted, and then the youngest one is in her care right now, and she's wanting to adopt that. But some of the things that you're saying, the grief that they've gone through, I mean, they're expressing it, and it's you're exactly, it really takes somebody focusing in on that to help them walk through that versus, well, they'll just get over it.
Right. I think sometimes too, as adults, we want our children to love us, right? We want them to accept us, to be proud of us. Let me say it like this. I want my children to love me.
Yeah.
I want them to accept me and to be proud of me. But it's important to remember that behavior is communication.
Yes.
It's not when your child is having these outbursts, it's not an indictment on your parenting.
Right.
They're trying to communicate something that they either can't say with their words or it's too much.
Right.
Like
they really don't have any context for
life experience.
Right.
No life experience. And so it's not an indictment on like, are you a bad parent or are you a good parent? That's not what's happening. It's a communication tool.
Yeah.
But that's so hard because a lot of our value is wrapped up in how we're parenting our children. And I'm as guilty as I am able to say the words out to encourage others of that too.
Oh
feeling
my gosh.
That.
You know, so Rachel, we could like talk forever. We could just sit here and talk all day, but I know that we've got to be mindful of our time, and I want people to understand what you do. How can people get in touch with you?
That's a great question. JoshuaCenter.org has, you fill out something on there and it just says contact us. You can find it there. It goes directly to my email. That's the great part about being a baby nonprofit. It all comes. And then Joshua Center's on Instagram. Pastor Rachel Long is on Instagram. There's I have my own website. Pastor Rachel Long has 2 R's and 2 L's in it.
Good to know.
And but JoshuaCenter.org. It's a nonprofit, so it's .org, and that really does come straight to me.
Yeah.
So I'm more than happy to field any information or questions, give any information from there.
Yes, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, what an honor.
I just love hearing your story and just your realness and your authenticity. I'm just so glad you're here. And I see a few ladies on here. Some of them said hello. I think Deidre Hancock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Hi, Deidre.
She is one of our VIP members
Oh,
here.
wonderful.
Yeah, we just were on beach retreat together. We did our annual beach retreat. She was there. Yeah, so there are a few of those ladies on
that's
today.
Great.
So
that's great.
So everybody, listen, we hope you have a fantastic day. And please, if you have any questions for Rachel, you can contact her. We'll also post that information for you when we go back on the replay. And we love you. Thank you. We hope you have a fantastic rest of the day and good, blessed weekend.